I never thought something like this could happen to me, and if I'm being honest, I still can't fully believe it even now. It started on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day where nothing remarkable ever happens. I was walking home from my dull office job, the sky grey and heavy with rain, my headphones on, scrolling through social media, when I saw her. She was everywhere, the model. The one with the porcelain skin, flawless hair, the kind of presence that made everyone stop in their tracks. I had seen her face countless times on magazine covers, on billboards, and in videos, but that day I saw her in person, or rather, I thought I did. She was standing outside a cafe, looking frustrated as she argued with someone on her phone, her designer bag swinging impatiently. And then, somehow, it happened. A flash, a dizzying vertigo, like the world had shifted under my feet. The next thing I knew, I was looking out from her eyes, feeling the delicate curve of her hands, the strange unfamiliar weight of her long hair brushing my shoulders. I froze. I couldn't speak, I couldn't even move properly without feeling completely disoriented. My heart was racing like a drum. I didn't just feel like I was in someone else's body. I was. At first, I panicked. I touched my face, then my chest, then my long legs, utterly fascinated and terrified all at once. The mirror in front of me confirmed what my mind refused to accept. I wasn't me anymore. I was her. I had swapped bodies with a supermodel, and the world I had only observed from afar was suddenly mine. The first few hours were surreal. I tried to control her phone, her laptop, to access her schedule, but nothing made sense. Every message, every notification, every little appointment was overwhelming. She was someone whose life was meticulously curated, and here I was, completely unprepared. I tried to calm down, telling myself that this had to be temporary, that I'd figure out a way back. But as the day went on, I realized this wasn't just some dream I could wake up from. Then the real challenge began, living her life without ruining it. It wasn't just about looking perfect in clothes or walking gracefully in heels, it was about managing expectations, maintaining a persona that millions of people paid to see. I had no idea how much work went into her life, how precise every detail had to be, from her diet to her speech, to even the way she smiled. And that's when the first mistakes happened. A photo shoot was scheduled. I tried to follow instructions, but I had no sense of camera angles, no understanding of poses, nothing. My arms stiffened when they should have flowed, my legs crossed awkwardly, my expressions were flat. The photographer frowned. The team whispered. I could feel my panic growing, my brain screaming at me to stop before I completely ruined everything. And in some ways, I already had. Every day was a test. I had to attend interviews, attend fashion events, smile at people I had never met, and pretend to know every little detail of her life. Sometimes I would freeze mid-conversation, struggling to remember what she had said or done. And the more I failed, the more I realized that I wasn't just living in someone else's body, I was stealing her life. Her career, her reputation, everything she had worked for, I was jeopardizing it with every wrong word, every awkward pose, every missed appointment. The worst was when I had to meet her manager. He was strict, meticulous, intimidating. Every question he asked me, I floundered. I misremembered events, mixed up names, and he raised his eyebrows, clearly questioning my competence. My stomach sank as I realized that in her world, even a single mistake could cascade into disaster. And then came the breaking point. A major campaign she had been preparing for months was scheduled to launch. A global brand, with commercials, billboards, social media posts, the works. The team was counting on her to be perfect, to be flawless. But that day, everything went wrong. I misread the schedule, arrived late, and in the shoot, I froze in front of the camera, my movements stiff, my expressions unnatural. The director's frustration was palpable. By the end of the day, they were discussing replacements and rescheduling, and I could feel her career unraveling before my eyes. The reality hit me harder than anything ever had. I was ruining her life, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know how to be her. I started panicking more and more. I couldn't call anyone, couldn't explain what was happening, and every day felt like I was walking on a tightrope over a pit of fire. I tried everything I could think of, studying her videos, rehearsing her mannerisms, memorizing her schedule, but it was impossible. Her life was too complex, too polished, and I was too human, too clumsy, too inexperienced in this world of perfection. And yet, something strange began to happen. As I struggled to navigate her life, I began to understand her, not just the surface-level beauty, but the pressure, the fear, the constant anxiety to maintain an image. I started noticing her little quirks, how she fiddled with her hair when nervous, how she flinched at criticism, how lonely she really was behind the glitz. I realized that even someone who looked untouchable could be vulnerable, could be human. By the time a week had passed, I was both better and worse at being her. Better, because I had learned her patterns, her preferences, how to navigate social situations without raising suspicion. Worse, because I had started to feel attached. Her life, her identity, her persona, it became intoxicating. There was a thrill in walking into rooms and being recognized, in commanding attention just by existing. But it was also terrifying, because I knew it wasn't mine. And then came the confrontation. She appeared, my body. I had no idea how it happened, but somehow she had swapped into me. Seeing myself from her perspective was surreal. She looked at me with a mixture of anger and fear. "What have you done?" she demanded. I tried to explain, to tell her it wasn't intentional, that I hadn't wanted to hurt her, but the words felt hollow. She was furious, and I couldn't blame her. Her career had suffered, her life had been hijacked by a version of herself she didn't recognize, and I was responsible. We argued, screamed, even cried. And in that chaos, something shifted. We realized that blaming each other wouldn't fix anything. We had to work together, to navigate this impossible situation, to find a way back. It was a fragile truce, but it was all we had. Over the next days, we learned from each other. I taught her some small things, my perspective, my insights into the ordinary life she never experienced. She taught me how to be her, how to move, how to speak, how to act without thinking. It was exhausting, frustrating, humbling. But slowly, we managed to stabilize her career. I corrected the disasters I had caused, apologized to teams, fixed schedules, learned to mimic her confidence. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to save her from complete ruin. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we returned to our own bodies. The relief was immense, but so was the lingering guilt. I had lived someone else's life, touched someone else's world, and almost destroyed it. But I had also learned, in a way I never could have imagined, what it meant to be someone else, to carry their pressures, their dreams, their fears. I had glimpsed the fragility of identity, the weight of expectation, and the beauty of courage, the courage it takes to be yourself in a world that demands perfection. Now, looking back, I understand the lesson. Life is not just about being seen, it's about being authentic, about navigating the chaos of existence with integrity and empathy. I didn't just swap bodies with a model, I swapped worlds, swapped identities, and it changed me forever. And as for her career, it survived, stronger perhaps because we both learned how easily it could fall apart, and how precious every small step toward authenticity really is. I can't go back to being naive about life. I can't pretend to be someone I'm not. And I will never forget the day I became her, and she became me, and we both survived to tell the story. That experience, terrifying as it was, taught me more about identity, courage, and acceptance than anything else ever could. And I carry that lesson with me, every day, in every choice I make, grateful that even in chaos, even in mistakes, there is always the chance to grow, to change, and to reclaim what truly matters ourselves. Even after we returned to our own bodies, the world felt different. I looked in the mirror and for a moment, I didn't recognize myself, not because my face had changed, but because my perception of myself had. I had seen life from someone else's perspective, lived in someone else's skin, and the experience left scars I couldn't erase. The first few days back, I avoided social media, avoided mirrors, avoided anyone who might remind me of her world. I didn't want to see her success or my own reflection tainted by memories of what had happened. But the world doesn't pause for introspection. I had to go back to my life, my office job, my dull routines, my unnoticed existence, and it felt heavier than ever. The memory of walking in heels, of being photographed, of having thousands of eyes on me constantly, haunted me. It made me question everything about who I was and who I wanted to be. I felt smaller, inadequate in a way I hadn't anticipated. And yet, paradoxically, I also felt braver. I had survived a life I was never meant to live, and I knew that I could face challenges in my own life with a new kind of courage. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop thinking about her, the real her, the one whose life I had nearly destroyed. I wondered if she hated me, if she blamed me for the near disaster of her career. I hesitated to reach out, afraid that even a simple apology might not be enough. And then, unexpectedly, she contacted me. Her message was simple, almost shocking in its brevity. "We need to talk. Alone." The meeting was tense. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, neither of us wanting to make eye contact at first. When she finally looked at me, I saw a flicker of what I had felt when I first looked at myself through her eyes: anger, fear, vulnerability. "You don't understand," she began, voice shaking slightly. "You lived my life, yes, but you also ruined moments I can't get back. Do you realize what it felt like, to be replaced in my own body?" I swallowed hard, feeling a lump in my throat. "I know," I whispered. "I didn't mean to. I panicked, I didn't know how to be you. But I learned. I tried to fix it." She studied me for a long time, her expression softening slightly. "It wasn't just about the work," she said finally. "It's about identity. About trust. You walked in my shoes, and now you know what it feels like to have your life controlled by someone else, even for a moment. That's not something you forget." Her words cut deep. I realized she was right. Even as I had felt powerful, even as I had felt a strange thrill, I had also felt powerless in ways I had never known. Her life wasn't glamorous, it was a carefully balanced act of performance, scrutiny, and sacrifice. And in my ignorance, I had trampled all over that balance. We talked for hours, sharing experiences from our respective weeks in each other's bodies. I told her about the panic, the fear, the awe. She told me about the vulnerability, the constant need to maintain perfection, the loneliness behind the lights and cameras. By the end of the conversation, something shifted. We weren't just strangers who swapped lives, we were two people who had shared an impossible experience and come out the other side, changed forever. She forgave me, though cautiously, and I promised to never forget the responsibility I had borne. We agreed to keep the incident secret, because who would believe us anyway? But even in secrecy, I felt a strange sense of freedom. I had glimpsed what it meant to walk in someone else's life and survive. I had seen fragility in perfection, humanity in fame, and the raw truth beneath the surface of appearances. In the weeks that followed, I noticed subtle changes in myself. I carried myself differently, more confident yet more humble. I noticed details I had ignored before: the kindness of a stranger, the courage it takes to stand up when the world expects you to bow, the complexity behind every smile and every confident pose. I also realized that identity is not just skin deep. It's choices, actions, empathy, and the courage to face life authentically. And then came the unexpected part: people began noticing me. Not for a photo shoot, not for fame, but for subtle changes in my demeanor. Colleagues commented on my poise, friends remarked on my calm confidence, strangers smiled more readily when I entered a room. I realized that living her life, even briefly, had taught me how to carry myself in my own life with a strength I hadn't known I possessed. Sometimes, late at night, I think back to that dizzying moment when everything shifted, when the world spun and I woke up in someone else's body. I remember the panic, the awe, the terror, and the lessons. I remember almost destroying a career, almost losing myself, almost losing her. And yet, I also remember the courage I found, the empathy I gained, and the understanding that identity is fragile but resilient, that mistakes are dangerous but redeemable, and that life is a constant act of transformation, whether we choose it or not. I don't know if I'll ever meet her again, but I hope that she sees me not as the person who ruined her, but as someone who survived, learned, and ultimately respected the life she fought so hard to maintain. And as for me, I live each day with the awareness that even ordinary life can hold extraordinary lessons, that the eyes through which we see the world can change us in ways we never imagined, and that courage often comes from the most unexpected experiences, even swapping bodies with someone else. Sometimes I catch a reflection of myself in a store window or a passing mirror, and I see both of us, hers in the shadow of my movements, mine in the subtle shift of my expression. And I smile, knowing that even through chaos, mistakes, and fear, we survived. We learned. We transformed. And somehow, against all odds, we found ourselves again. The days after our meeting were quieter, but the tension never fully left me. I couldn't shake the memory of her life, the precision, the pressure, the constant gaze of the world. I tried to return to normalcy, to my old routines, but something had shifted permanently inside me. I began noticing patterns I never had before, the way people reacted to authority, the way confidence could command a room, the subtle nuances in body language that revealed hidden emotions. I realized that living her life, even for a short time, had sharpened my perception of everything around me. And yet, the guilt lingered. Every time I thought of her, I imagined the moments I had failed her, missed cues at photoshoots, stiff interviews, awkward smiles that made her team doubt her professionalism. I carried a weight on my shoulders that wasn't entirely mine, but it felt like it belonged there nonetheless. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. No one would understand. How could I explain that for a week, I had literally been someone else, and in doing so, had almost destroyed her career? Then came the call. She had invited me to a small private event, a gallery opening she was attending, a celebration of her latest campaign finally launching successfully. I almost didn't go. Part of me wanted to hide, to avoid the reminder of everything I had nearly ruined. But another part of me knew I had to face it, had to see the outcome of the chaos I had caused. When I arrived, she was already there. The moment our eyes met, I felt an unspoken understanding. We had survived something extraordinary together, and there was no need for words to explain it. She smiled, a small, genuine smile that was unlike the polished expressions she wore in public. "You're here," she said simply. I nodded, unsure what to say. "I wanted to see that you're okay," I admitted. She studied me, then laughed softly. "I'm more than okay. I'm stronger than I was before. And somehow, I think you are too." Her words struck me in a way I didn't expect. There was truth in them. I wasn't the same person I had been before the swap. I had glimpsed a world of expectations, fear, and perfection, and somehow I had survived it. That experience had changed me in ways I was only beginning to understand. Throughout the evening, I observed her in her element, the way she moved, the way she engaged with people, the quiet confidence she carried now that I had helped her reclaim. Every gesture, every laugh, every glance reminded me of how delicate identity could be, how much trust we place in ourselves and each other. I realized that living her life, even briefly, had taught me more about courage, empathy, and resilience than anything else ever could. As the event wound down, she pulled me aside. "You know," she said, "most people wouldn't survive what you did. Most would crumble under the pressure. But you didn't just survive. You learned. And for that, I can't be angry anymore." Her forgiveness felt like a release. I had carried the weight of her life for so long, and finally, it was lifted not because the past was erased, but because we had both grown from it. I realized then that transformation isn't about perfection, it's about understanding, adapting, and facing the consequences of our actions with courage. Walking home that night, I felt a strange sense of peace. I thought about how fragile identity can be, how easily it can be disrupted, and how resilient it can also be when tested. I had swapped bodies with a model, lived a life I was never meant to, almost ruined a career, and yet, I had emerged stronger, more empathetic, and more aware of the humanity that lies beneath every polished surface. From that day forward, I approached life differently. I paid more attention, listened more closely, and carried myself with a confidence tempered by humility. I didn't crave the spotlight, nor did I long to live someone else's life. Instead, I cherished the life I had, knowing how easily it could have been altered, how quickly it could have been lost. And every so often, when I see someone in the media, flawless and poised, I remember the lessons I learned not from what I saw, but from what I lived. We never spoke of the body swap again, but the experience stayed with me, quietly shaping the choices I made, the empathy I extended, and the courage I carried. I realized that identity isn't just about who we are on the outside, it's about the experiences we endure, the mistakes we survive, and the growth we embrace. And sometimes, The most extraordinary lessons come from stepping completely outside ourselves, even if it means almost losing everything we hold dear. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about her, about me, and about the fragile, beautiful complexity of life. I understood that transformation doesn't always happen through choice. Sometimes, it comes from circumstance, from chaos, from the terrifying, inexplicable moments that force us to see the world and ourselves differently. And in that understanding, I found a kind of peace. Not because the past could be undone, but because I had survived it, learned from it, and become someone stronger, wiser, and more fully myself. And so, I live each day with that awareness, carrying the lessons of a life that wasn't mine but taught me how to truly own my own. I remember her, the real her, the model, the person whose life I almost destroyed, and I smile, knowing that despite everything, we survived, we learned, and we transformed in ways neither of us could have imagined. A few weeks after that gallery event, life seemed to settle back into its usual rhythm, but something felt off. I couldn't explain it at first. I went to work, I walked the streets, I met friends, but there were moments when I would catch a reflection of myself, and it would feel like someone else was staring back. Not her, exactly, but a version of me that had changed, deepened, shaped by the week I lived as her. It was subtle, like a shadow following me, a whisper of a life I had borrowed and survived. Then it happened. I received a package at my door. No return address, nothing but a small black envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it, fearing it might be some reminder of the chaos I had caused. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. My body, sitting in a chair I recognized from my apartment, but with her handwriting scrawled on the back, "You changed more than you know." Ha! A chill ran down my spine. It wasn't threatening, it was a message, a confirmation that our lives were forever entwined. That week of chaos, of swapped identities, of near destruction, had left traces we couldn't ignore. I realized then that some experiences don't end just because the circumstances change, they linger, shaping us, reminding us of what we survived. And yet, despite the unease, there was a strange comfort in it. I wasn't alone in carrying this memory, she wasn't alone either. We had shared the impossible, and in doing so, we had understood each other and ourselves in ways that no one else could. I thought about her career, her triumphs, and the way she reclaimed her life, stronger, wiser, and more human than before. And I thought about myself, and how I had been forced to confront courage, identity, and responsibility in the most surreal way imaginable. I began noticing the subtle ways my life had changed permanently. I walked with more awareness, spoke with more intention, and listened with empathy I didn't have before. I realized that living her life even briefly had given me a blueprint for strength I had never known existed. I had been tested in a crucible of perfection, scrutiny, and fear, and I had survived. More than that, I had learned something priceless. Identity is fluid, fragile, and resilient all at once. It can be disrupted, stolen, borrowed, and yet it can also be reclaimed with courage, honesty, and self-awareness. Sometimes, late at night, I still replay the week of the swap in my mind, the panic, the awe, the terror, the thrill of living as someone else. I remember the near mistakes that could have ruined everything, the frantic attempts to navigate a world I wasn't built for, and the moments of quiet humanity that reminded me that even perfection is imperfect. And I realized that those moments, terrifying as they were lessons I would carry forever. The strangest part is the lingering question, what if it happened again? What if, somewhere, somehow, our identities were swapped again, even briefly? I don't fear it, exactly, I welcome it. Because I know now that transformation is not about the body we inhabit, but about the courage we summon, the empathy we feel, and the choices we make when the world shifts beneath our feet. In the end, the swap didn't ruin her career, nor did it destroy my life. It changed us both in ways neither of us could have predicted. We survived the chaos, reclaimed our lives, and learned something extraordinary about identity, responsibility, and resilience. And perhaps most importantly, we understood that even when life throws you into someone else's world, the real challenge and the real reward is learning how to return, stronger and wiser, to your own. I still sometimes look in mirrors and see traces of her, and I wonder if she sees traces of me in her reflections too. It's not unsettling, it's a reminder that extraordinary experiences leave marks, that lives can intertwine in ways we never expect, and that transformation, real, profound, lasting transformation, comes not from magic, but from survival, reflection, and courage. And so, every day, I live with the awareness that our identities are precious, delicate, and resilient. I live knowing that mistakes can happen, lives can be altered, and chaos can test us. But I also live knowing that growth, understanding, and transformation are possible, and that the most extraordinary lessons often come from the most unexpected experiences. Sometimes, when I catch a glimpse of myself in the reflection of a shop window or the dark surface of a lake, I pause. I smile. And I remember, I swapped bodies with a model. I almost ruined her career. I survived. I learned. And I was changed forever. The world moves on, but some experiences never leave us. Some lives, once intertwined, leave permanent echoes in our hearts, teaching us, shaping us, and reminding us that the line between ordinary and extraordinary is thinner than we think, and sometimes, it takes losing yourself completely to find out who you really are.